In today's video, we have a lot of news and rumors to discuss, including some trade rumors around the Montreal Canadiens, Vancouver Canucks, Philadelphia Flyers, Detroit Red Wings, and some others. Plus, we have the latest updates on Ethan Bear, where he may be heading as he's ready to resume play here soon. Gabe Landeskog's back around the Avalanche. What does his future hold? Plus, we have a big update as well regarding a lengthy suspension likely coming for David Perron of the Red Wings. We're going to discuss that whole chaotic scenario with the Senators a little bit further. Plus, we had another chaotic scenario today involving the Florida Panthers and the Columbus Blue Jackets. All that and Jesse Puljujarvi's back in the NHL coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. I want to get things started though with the stuff from the Department of NHL player safety. So first up, we have David Perron of the Detroit Red Wings is going to happen via Zoom, but he was offered an in-person hearing for the vicious attack on Artem Zub in the Ottawa Senators game last night. Now, in case you missed the game or you haven't seen the clip, it's been a pretty hot topic between last night and today among social media and here on YouTube. I know I've obviously discussed it a bit in last night's video. Lots of comments on it, some agreeing with me, some disagreeing with me, which is totally fine. So I just want to go over that a little bit further. So essentially what happens is the Red Wings are attacking in the Ottawa net, near the Ottawa net. Dylan Larkin gets shoved by Matthew Joseph, and it looks like there might, you can't see exactly, but it was kind of like a shove. He makes some contact around like the upper head area, but to me it's not like the same as head contact like as a check, but he was shoved. And then that causes him to collide into Parker Kelly, who's coming back to defend the house as well. So Joseph is essentially trying to box out Larkin, get him out of the way, clear him out of the zone, or out of the crease area is kind of what he's looking to do. And Larkin goes down. And he's motionless on the ice. It didn't look like anything real bad happened, but at the same time, he does have a history of neck issues because of some other stuff that's happened, and everything kind of just stops because everybody's kind of concerned. So after this, David Perron turns around. He sees Artem Zub standing next to Larkin. And at this point, Zub, who had nothing to do with anything, is waving for the trainers to come, like he's waving for help. And David Perron comes along and cross-checks them right in the side of the head and tackles them down to the ice and starts throwing punches. So he's facing an in-person hearing for that. He was given a match penalty for intent to injure. I do think that part's 100% right. Now, on that same play, Matthew Joseph and Parker Kelly were both given roughing penalties. I have no problem with that as well. The part that I don't like is I see a lot of people really hating on Matthew Joseph. And to be honest, I could show you some screenshots because there's lots of great examples. But there's a lot of Red Wings fans, and I know it's not everybody, but every fan base has their toxic bunch, their toxic crew, their immature crew, whatever you want to call it, going on to Matthew Joseph's social media and leaving hateful messages, really like nasty stuff. Why do you feel the need to go on players' social media and leave hateful spewed messages like that because something happened in a game and against your team? Like, it completely uncalled for. I don't care who it is. Really don't. Like, why would you ever like, I don't think it's ever really justified. Like, I mean, people need to leave these people alone and grow up. Like, these players don't deserve hate like that. Anyways, obviously a hot topic between Red Wings fans see it one way, Sens fans see it another way. I get that. Though David Perron's got an in-person hearing, they're actually going to do it via Zoom. He would have had to agree to that and waive his right to go to an in-person hearing. So that tells you that it's likely looking at 5+ games. So, I mean, David Perron does have a little bit of history during his time in the NHL and a few other run-ins with player safety. So, I mean, he's never been suspended for like anything too lengthy, but still, this is looking pretty serious. For everybody who's calling for Joseph and Kelly to be punished further, it's not going to happen, and I don't understand why. To me, what happened is it a penalty? Sure. But is it more? To me, it's an unfortunate outcome of that. I mean, I don't want to see anybody laying motionless on the ice. I really don't. but I just don't know that, attacking these people or punishing them further is not going to change anything. Now, some good news on Dylan Larkin, obviously, is he was obviously observed and taken for a lot of tests and what have you. And a lot of the scans they did were negative, so they haven't found anything, serious that way. They don't have a timeline on his return as of yet, so we don't know. So I certainly don't want to see that happen to anybody. I hope he's okay and can return to play real soon. We had more chaos today between the Panthers and the Blue Jackets. Panthers forward Nick Cousins was kind of running around, nailed Eric Gudbranson from behind. It was actually called a major penalty, reviewed and rescinded down to a minor, and I was a little surprised by that. Watching it, I kind of thought, okay, I can see where that can be a major for sure. Anyways, Eric Gudbranson later kind of pulled a sort of the same stunt as Perron in a sense, and completely attacks Cousins, and Nick Cousins would not defend himself. He basically turtled. Obviously, Gudbranson's a lot bigger, a lot stronger, used to fighting where Cousins isn't. So I can understand why he wouldn't want to. But anyways, it's one of those cases where a lot of players feel like they get to answer the bell because of what they did. Obviously, he didn't feel that way. Again, you could see a divide amongst the fan bases on who's right and who's wrong. I don't know. I mean, from what I didn't see it all happen live, because I did see the replay, and I've seen a lot of clips and highlights from that game, and it does look like Cousins was running around, and I'm a little surprised by the inconsistency, which I shouldn't be, I guess, amongst NHL officiating. If you look at some of the hits we've seen this weekend and some of these incidents, how they're all so different. Like Evander Kane and Jonas Brodin was nothing. They said Brodin kind of put himself in a bad spot and should have been able to reposition himself to just take the hit better. Then there's the one in Montreal too with Justin Barron. That was on an Eric Robinson, I believe it was. That was called a major penalty. This one was called a major, rescinded to a minor. And when you watch them all, you could probably, I think as a neutral fan, I think I could probably say that they could all be majors. It's hard to wrap your head around the inconsistency. But at the end of the day, lots of chaos in the NHL this weekend. Certainly some injuries as well. And thankfully this one, no, between Gudbranson and Cousins, that whole deal, not, nothing scary like we saw with Larkin, which was the most scary situation that happened all weekend, and I hope he's okay. A few other updates. One, David Savard returns tonight for the Montreal Canadiens. He's missed 22 games. The coaching staff would not confirm which defenseman was going to come out of the lineup to make room for him. I believe they were going to make a game time decision, or might even go with an extra D and warm up and decide afterwards. So we will see. Kraken goalie Philip Grubauer was injured against Tampa. He's going to be out for about a week or more. There's also some talk around Seattle Kraken a little bit more as well in the rumor mill. Elliot Friedman made mention of this on the Saturday Headlines segment on Hockey Night in Canada last night, saying that the Kraken are getting some interest in Adam Larsson. Of course, a pretty solid right shot stay-at-home defenseman, more famously known for the Taylor Hall, Adam Larsson 1-for-1 trade, which I know Oilers fans were not happy with for a long time. Essentially, at this point, Larsson is getting lots of attention. It's not real clear or obvious that the Kraken definitely want to move him, but it's no secret that they certainly need help scoring. They are not scoring anywhere near the pace they did last year, which is a big part of, not the only reason they're not winning as many games, but it's playing its role for sure. And it's believed that they may be willing to trade from the blue line to find some scoring help. So we'll see what happens. Teams are looking for that type of defenseman. They might have a little bit more scoring that they're willing to give up. So we'll see if that kind of can materialize into a trade that makes sense for Seattle. But Larsson could find himself on the move here. Ethan Bear, one of the more interesting UFA names still out there because there's not very many at this point. Getting a lot of attention. About 3 to 4 teams in the mix. At one point, a lot of people thought Vancouver was going to be the obvious choice. But then with some of the other moves they made, there's not really much there that they can offer. So Elliot Friedman's reporting that the Washington Capitals are making an aggressive push to sign Ethan Bear, and they appear to be like the front runners right now. But again, no clear-cut decisions have been made, and it looks like they're certainly not the only ones in the mix. Besides Vancouver having interest, I think there's by at least a couple other teams around it, but we don't know who they are at this point. But it could be an interesting option for different teams for sure. Somebody who can play, in my opinion, top 4, right shot. It's an interesting option for teams that are looking in that way. They don't have to give up any assets. But Washington would be a team that would make a lot of sense, so we'll see. It's also been reported that Avalanche captain Gabriel Landeskog has been back in Denver, will be around the team more. That was confirmed by head coach Jared Bednar. Certainly not going to be practicing with the team yet. No timeline or word on if or when he can play again or resume his career, but he is going to be back in Denver on a full-time basis, which is positive. He's expected to start skating soon. We'll see how that goes. They're going to start with some light skating and start seeing how, as long as everything's going good, gradually ramp things up. Like I said, no timeline here just yet. I wouldn't be surprised myself if he doesn't return this regular season. I personally think that between now and the rest of the regular season, he'll have an opportunity to see if he can get himself to the point that he can play and maybe return for the playoffs. I think that's probably a best case scenario, but we'll have to wait and see. The good news is he's around the team more, he's going to be skating more, and hopefully there's a positive outcome here and not any more additional setbacks. So we also got word that the Penguins have brought in a UFA, and that's Jesse Puljujarvi coming back from Europe. Obviously, he's been overseas for some time. Obviously had a big surgery after finishing out the year last year with Carolina after the trade out of Edmonton. So he's going to Pittsburgh on a professional tryout. Now, no firm contract here as of yet, so he is not officially on the roster the rest of the year, but what they're hoping for is that he can come in and play more of a bottom 6 role. Their bottom 6 has been a lot of moving parts, hard to find an exact right mix. We know Puljujarvi, after having a pretty significant hip surgery, has been recovering and rehabbing and has looked pretty good. We've seen some video of him earlier from that sense. The big issue with Puljujarvi during his time in the NHL is the lack of ability to finish on the offense, but he does have very good defensive metrics. Traditionally been a pretty good skater, got a good size. So he's one of those players, even though he was drafted really highly and expected to be a much more offensive player, he is one of the exceptions, and I guess you could say, that does have that ability to play the bottom 6 style. Whereas some guys, it's either they play top 6 or they just can't play. That's not necessarily the case with him. So with Pittsburgh having a lot of, like I said, moving parts and trying to find that right mix in the bottom 6, if they decide they want to sign him, they can sign him for the rest of the year pretty cheap, I would think, and see where it goes. So Jesse Puljujarvi's back in the NHL with the Penguins, but not on a full-fledged contract just yet. We'll see how this tryout goes and if it leads to a contract with them here soon enough. We also get word, speaking of Vancouver, we talked about them a little bit earlier on the, being involved with the potential Ethan Bear sweepstakes. But one player they're getting a lot of calls about, according to Elliot Friedman, which makes a lot of sense, is Andrei Kuzmenko. That's a developing story because of the being in Rick Tocchet's doghouse, essentially. Kuzmenko was a nice story for Vancouver last year. Comes over from Russia, scores 39 goals, gets a new contract extension. Everything looks like it's going to be great. This guy's a terrific late blooming UFA that comes over from Russia. Played with Pettersson a lot last year. Was scoring a bunch. Like it was a great find. This was like free money for them, right? And then getting $5.5 million for a couple more years. It really looked like a terrific solution and for Vancouver. But things are a lot different this year. He's only got 4 goals in 25 games. I know Rick Tocchet doesn't seem to be happy with the style of play. He's preached a lot to the media about how he needs to back check more and forecheck more. And, he's obviously not forechecking a lot, which is what Tocchet really wants. Tocchet has his types of players, so to speak, and it's really no big surprise or secret that Kuzmenko doesn't exactly, fit that perfect description. But based on how he played in Vancouver last year, especially the chemistry with Pettersson, it seemed like it should work anyways, and it's just not right now. So at this point, we don't have reason to think that Vancouver wants to kind of pull the plug and trade him. They do have a lot of players under contract with the same agent as him, with Dan Milstein. So certainly, I think they want to be careful here. They don't want to upset the agent because, like I said, he handles a lot of players on their roster. And, after scoring 39 goals last year, you got to think they'd want to kind of try to rehabilitate the situation, so to speak, and see if they can't make it better and make it so that he can be more successful again, because he was a big part of their scoring last year, and they need to find a way to get going with him. But if the head coach is cutting back his ice time, he's been sat a few times. I understand why teams are calling and seeing what they're interested in doing. And we'll see if it leads to anything further and could lead to a trade. But Vancouver's getting calls. They have to make up their mind if something good comes along, I guess. At this point as well, we also got word on the headline segment last night from Elliotte Friedman that the Flyers are getting attention on some of their defensemen, which is, again, not a big surprise. He said at least one team has called and asked him about trading defenseman Sean Walker and Nick Seeler together as a pair. No word on if they're willing to do that. The good news in Philly is John Tortorella's got this team playing pretty well. They're near the top of the Metropolitan Division, which is a big surprise, especially how far into the season we are. And at this point, the Flyers are trending towards being a playoff team, so they have no reason to rush. They have absolutely no hurry here whatsoever. If they can get in the playoffs, they probably don't want to deplete their roster too much. At the same time, they know that this is a year of development and kind of turning over the roster a little bit more. So they'll make the right moves if it makes sense for their team. But because they're winning, they have no rush whatsoever. So, these players on the Flyers that are generating interest in the rumor mill might be a little bit tougher to get after all. We might see more wheeling and dealing after the season than we see during it if the Flyers continue to play like this. But no big surprise that the teams have seen these guys play well together, want to keep them on a pair. Also, some news out of Detroit. Dave Pagnotta of thefourthperiod.com is reporting that the Red Wings are actively working on a trade. I don't know how imminent it is. He didn't make it sound like it was going to go down like this evening or anything, but he said they were in trade talks and believed to be involved. On their side, one of the players involved was Jonathan Berggren. Berggren was a player who mostly played in the NHL last year, didn't make the team out of camps, but up and down, was held out of an AHL game today because of it. That's why we've got the impression things might be progressing or at least close on a trade. I would have to think if they're making a trade involving a good young player like this, that it's probably for a defenseman. I do wonder if it could be the Flames' Noah Hanifin. No guarantee, of course, that's the case. I know they prefer to trade Hanifin with a contract extension, but if they're finding that difficult to pull off, they may not do it. If they can get a good young player like Berggren in return, maybe they pull the trigger on that instead. I don't know. And it may not be Hanifin, but based on what Detroit could use, I would think that, they're not going to be looking to add in the forward group. To me, it makes more sense on the blue line. Goaltending, they obviously are likely going to trade James Reimer at some point, but Husso and Lyon appear ready and able to take the workload between the pipes. So it's got to be a defenseman that they're targeting here. And my spidey sense says to watch for Noah Hanifin. There might be a player there after all. And in Montreal, tonight's game with the Montreal Canadiens features 13 scouts coming to watch this game. And I have to think that there's a variety of players they're looking at, but goaltender Jake Allen, to me, gets a ton of attention tonight. I believe he's getting the start. Caden Primo played their last game against the Buffalo Sabres yesterday. Probably by far his best NHL appearance, in my opinion. He's getting better. We know Montembeault signed to a 3-year extension, and it's believed that they're not going anywhere with him. So you have to think that a Jake Allen trade is getting more and more likely. A couple of teams that I think you should look out for potential sweepstakes when it comes to Allen potentially being moved. One is Seattle. Grubauer is hurt now, and we've talked about the inconsistency between Grubauer and Joey Decourt. So there's that possibility. We know the Devils are not the most pleased with Akira Schmid and Vitek Vanacek. I have to think that they could use a veteran upgrade in New Jersey, that he would be appealing. I know we talked yesterday about John Gibson being an option, but Jake Allen's going to come at a cheaper price tag, so that might be an option. And Carolina is another team. We wouldn't have said this at the beginning of the year, but Freddie Anderson's out an indefinite period of time dealing with blood clot issues. Blood clot issues can be very tricky to deal with. A lot of players that have had this issue have missed close to a year sometimes. So I don't think the Carolina Hurricanes can bank on Freddie Anderson being available at all this season anymore. Antti Ranta has struggled. Kochetkov has struggled. This team could use some serious help. And Jake could be a guy to come in and work with Ranta and kind of stabilize the tandem. I wouldn't completely rule out the Hurricanes from being in the mix here. So I would have thought they'd be going after goaltending into the season, but I think it's something they seriously need to be looking at for sure based on how they've played. They've lost their last 4 games on this road trip. They had a players-only team meeting. Things are not going well. They're still okay in the standings because they had a good start to the campaign in the season, but they're struggling lately, and I think we're going to see them be aggressive and make a move or two to kind of right the ship here, so to speak. So it wouldn't be shocking at all to see them go after a veteran goaltender who can come in and stabilize things. So let me know your thoughts on that and everything else discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.